Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I am so happy that you are here. I want to start this with a question. Do you ever say you're fine when you're not? When you're upset about something? Do you ever use sarcasm to let someone know that you're pissed off instead of just saying what it is? Or are you ever on the receiving end of these behaviors? Because that's what this whole episode is about today, which is the passive-aggressive expression of anger. So if you've ever done it, or if you've ever been on the receiving end of it, welcome to being a human being in relationships with other people. But there is something, it's important that we figure out why we do it. And what I'm going to be teaching you today in this episode is why we do it, what it looks like, and what you can do instead. So before we get started, if you happen to be new to my YouTube channel, well, hello. Please introduce yourself in the comments because we're a friendly group. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon so you get notified every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday. Thank you for being here. I super appreciate you. You know I do. All right, let's move it on into today's content. All right, so diving into something that really does secretly destroy more relationships, probably, than cheating, than infidelity. Passive, aggressive anger. In my almost 3 decades as a psychotherapist, it is just such a slow drip of poison when someone is passive aggressive in the relationship. So if you've ever been on that receiving end, as I said before, of no, I'm fine, or I'm not mad, I just think it's interesting that, right? It's so funny. Years ago, when Vic was pissed about something, he would say, interesting. And not usually like at me, you know what I mean? But I would get so mad because even then I was so like, had a lot of therapy. And I would say, stop saying something is interesting when what you want to say is that you're finding it annoying or frustrating or you're mad about it. He'd be like, relax, lady. But there's something about the disingenuousness, is that even a word, of that I don't like. So if you've had these experiences, buckle up because we're about to dive deep into this. Passive-aggressive anger is sort of the anger that's hiding behind that polite smile, but it really is emotional poison. You know, people in the South have mastered the art of this, where all the bless your hearts in the world, anyone with half a brain knows if someone is saying bless your heart, that's not what they mean. They say bless your heart instead of saying this person is an idiot. You know what I mean? That's what they're really saying. And I think that part of why in my life I love New York, lived there for almost 3 decades. Like, you know, I was born in New York State, grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and then moved back in right out of college and lived there for years. But I was always so comfortable with New Yorkers because of their unabashed directness. And some people would say it was crass, or some people would say it was uncouth or too direct. But my nervous system knew, I don't know, I'd rather have someone say what they're saying. You know, when I worked as a talent agent, and I've told this story before, not to be boring, but, you know, I've lived in LA for a period of time, and I just didn't fit in the culture out there where you're at a party or a gathering and people are talking to you, but they're looking over your shoulder to see if there's somebody more important they should be talking to you instead of you, or people who you don't like and they don't like you are saying to you, we should have lunch. You're like, why are you saying we should have lunch when we don't like each other? Or in New York, if someone is saying you, they just can say you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We could still do business together. We don't have to like each other. But you're certainly not going to say, let's have lunch, because that seems so friggin' weird. I don't know. Anyway, long way around the barn to get back to, hey, maybe I should define what passive-aggressive anger actually is. It is indirect or disguised hostility. It's like when we express our anger sideways because either you don't feel safe being direct, you don't know you're angry. So listen, I had a very disconnected relationship with my own anger up until my late 20s, like for real. Or you want control without accountability, right? When we're giving someone we say something's a joke, but we say there's some truth in it and it's going to be kind of biting or cutting to the other person. We want the satisfaction of letting them know we're pissed, and then we want the ability to say, I was just kidding. right? So what are examples of this? We have sarcasm. It can also come out by withholding affection, right? Being like cold to someone. Stonewalling, which means you're basically not communicating or you're not even answering if they're asking you questions. Procrastinating intentionally, right? If you're in a relationship with someone who is asking you to do something, but you resent them asking, you'll either take forever to do it or do it badly, hopefully so they don't ask you again, right? But again, that's passive aggressive. Rather than saying, I don't want to do this, or I don't like this chore, or can we swap, I'll do this and you do that. It can also come out with someone giving you the silent treatment. And then it's interesting. I heard this name called weaponized uncertainty. When someone says to you, oh, you should know why I'm mad. What? Should I? Because I can't read your mind. But that happens all the time. I didn't know there was a name for it. I guess there's a name for everything. But anyway, so weaponized uncertainty. I shouldn't have to tell you why I'm mad. But passive aggression, what we're really saying is that I'm upset, but I refuse to take responsibility for my upsetness. So I'm putting it on you. So why do we do it, right? Why is this, right? Because listen, you guys, no shame, no blame, right? Because first of all, we've all been there, and it's not about judging, it's about understanding. Because passive aggressive expression of anger is a strategy that usually is learned early in life, right? It often comes if you were raised in a household, you have a family of origin where direct anger was punished, or speaking up was unsafe, or one parent was explosive, right? And maybe you as the kid became the peacekeeper in that situation, or feelings were minimized or mocked. So it would make sense that you would make a joke of something even though it's not funny. Or you learn to read a room, right? But you don't know anything about your own emotions. We become experts, I definitely did in my childhood, at reading other people's emotions. Growing up, even long into being in therapy, I think I had a very distant relationship with my own emotions. I was in such denial because I grew up. Sometimes you have emotions in family systems that are forbidden emotions, which I wrote about, I think in Boundary Boss, my first book, where it's the family system. Like my family system was kind of a waspy system where nobody needed to tell me that it wasn't cool to be angry. I just knew it because it was an unspoken rule. I mean, my father was allowed to be angry, but nobody else. So instead of saying I'm angry, we learned to say nothing, right? We express anger in ways that wouldn't get me in trouble. So it's like anger in a disguise that we needed to sort of just survive whatever childhood conditions you were in. And of course, as I've said a million times, is that what was adaptive in childhood often becomes maladaptive or toxic in our adult lives. Because let's move into what is the damage of passive aggressive anger do, right? Because it's not harmless, right? Somebody telling you something and saying, I'm only teasing, I'm only kidding, when they're saying something that's hurting you and is designed to hurt you. That is not harmless, right? This type of behavior erodes emotional security, right? It erodes emotional safety. If someone is doing that, when I was in a relationship in my young life with people, and I didn't even know my own truth, I couldn't possibly have told them I was angry because I was too threatened by my own anger to even be angry. But I was an emotionally untrustworthy person because someone would say, is anything wrong? And I would say, I'm fine, with an angry tone. You're just lying. Right? I just didn't have the skills. I mean, through therapy, of course, eventually I got them. But if you're doing this, your partner starts feeling like they can't trust what you say because they can't, right? If I'm fine means I'm furious, I'm pissed, I'm angry. Communication, it's like you might as well be shaking up a magic 8-ball because it's a guessing game. They don't know. It forces this mind reading thing, right? Healthy relationships themselves, you guys, you know this, require clarity. But passive aggression creates all of this tension, but confusion and constant emotional labor. It's the same as walking on eggshells, right? We're trying to decode what the fuck is going on with the other person because they're not saying what the fuck is going on with them. And it's unfair, right? And what does it do? This is what I discovered in my relationships. It builds resentment, right? Both people end up resentful, right? One, because you feel misunderstood, and the other, because you feel manipulated. So it's like a combo platter of, as Vic would say, bad, bad, not good. So we do not want that, because when we're in a relationship, hopefully our goal is to have like deep and abiding intimacy. And when you are expressing yourself passively aggressively, it really does block how intimate the relationship can be, because intimacy itself requires authenticity, right? Passive aggression is emotional avoidance. We're getting to discharge our feeling, but we're doing it sideways, as I said at the top. We're doing it in this confusing way. It also creates this power imbalance in the relationship, right? Because passive-aggressive people often maintain power by withholding clarity. It's a covert dominance move. If we're going to say, like, who's the dom and who's the sub in that situation, if someone is keeping you, like, on your toes and you're trying to figure out if they're mad or if they're not half the time, they're dominating you with their confusion. And if you had an unpredictable or emotionally immature parent, passive-aggressive dynamics can really reactivate the chaos from your childhood into your adult relationship, right? And it's not a communication style. It's a slow drip of like unhealthiness is what I would say, where people are like, oh, the person is just really sarcastic. Listen, you could be sarcastic if it's not at someone else's expense, right? I think sometimes sarcastic humor is funny. I've got my own way of being sarcastic, but not at someone else's expense. If you are in a relationship, you can end up in this cycle that you're looking at, right? There's a common cycle. So conflict arises, you have a fight about something, one partner feels hurt, but doesn't express it clearly. Instead, they withdraw, they slam a cabinet, they get sarcastic, they roll their eyes, they slam a door. The other partner senses something is wrong and asks about it. They get nothing. I'm fine, is what you say. Then anxiety builds because now the partner is guessing and chasing and trying to problem solve. Like they're slamming a door, they're huffing and puffing, something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. Now, the person who's being passive aggressive, right? They might feel pursued. They might feel overwhelmed, which confirms their belief that direct communication is unsafe. So this cycle repeats. So there's no repair, right? There's no clarity. It just is like this back and forth experience where you're like, oh my God, this is not cool. Like, I don't want this. So what happens to our nervous system when we're going into passive aggressive? This is a nervous system response. It's less about, oh, a flaw is you as a human being, and it's more about a reaction. So when we don't feel safe expressing anger, the body goes into, right? We know this, fight, fawn, freeze, right? So we're shutting down. We know these biological, physiological reactions to feeling threatened. So indirect expression, instead of fighting, or instead of clean communication. That's like what we're doing to discharge all the emotion that we're feeling. So this often happens when the direct communication is not available to you, right? But you still need to get rid of that energy. So we have to understand this in order to sort of move into healthy anger and what does it look like? Because anger is not the problem, you guys. How you express it is what we're talking about. Healthy anger can sound as simple as, I'm hurt by what happened. I felt dismissed. I need clarity. I didn't like how that felt. Like super clear and short, right? It's clear, it's boundaried, it's regulated, right? Passive aggressive anger is like manipulative. It's confusing. It's murky. You're like, I don't know what the hell this person's talking about. So what you're going to do instead, right? If you move that way, if you're like, oh gosh, I'm pretty passive aggressive. So let's talk about solutions. If you recognize yourself here, don't panic. You're just a regular human being, right? We're all doing the best that we can. This is incredibly common and super fixable, right? So first thing you're going to do is slow down and identify feelings, right? What is the actual emotion under this behavior? Whenever I slow down, when I'm angry and I want to be passive aggressive, it's because I'm hurt. Usually, anger is a secondary emotion that's covering up a more tender emotion of hurt, scared, disappointed, feeling marginalized or unimportant. So what we want to do is we want to get to that core emotion. So instead of being like, I was so annoyed or I was so pissed, getting to what was it really? Was it that you were feeling hurt? Was it that you felt overwhelmed? Or maybe you just need a minute to gather yourself, and you can say that. Because what happens is we're replacing indirect hostility, because that's what passive aggressive anger is, with direct honesty, right? So instead of saying whatever when someone says something, you can just say, you don't have to have the perfect words. You can just say, I didn't love how that went. Can we start again? Can I get a do-over? I didn't love that. I didn't love my reaction, or I didn't love how, you don't have to be perfect. But that is so much more honest than slamming a door and rolling your eyes. And then we have to come up with our own repair rituals in our relationships. So it's okay to say, hey, I realized I got passive aggressive. Here's what I was actually feeling. Because this instantly starts to rebuild trust, where you're owning what is on your side of the street. And I think that there's something really powerful about practicing micro truths daily, right? So these are small, direct truths that really can create massive emotional safety. Even if it's just, I'm tired, or I could use your support right now, or I didn't like that joke. Just as simple as that. I didn't like that. Giving the other person an opportunity, and hopefully they'll be doing the same. And I think that part of what switches us is that we have to learn to tolerate the discomfort of being angry, right? It's a muscle we have to flex. And for many of us, if you've been afraid of your anger, it's a feeling we try to get away from as fast as possible. But when I learned to hang with my own anger, I was then able to speak the truth about what I was really feeling. I could see that underneath my passive-aggressive desire to slam a door or say something snide was my little kid or my hurt feelings. So, now if you're on the receiving end, quickly, I just want to cover, what do you do, right? You got to try to name the pattern without necessarily using blaming language, right? I'm sensing tension, but I'm also getting mixed signals. So I want to understand, can we speak directly about this, right? Don't engage in the game, because if their passive-aggressive tactic of trying to make you guess doesn't work. So your job is to not guess, don't chase, don't decode, right? You can actually set a healthy boundary. I want to resolve this when we can both communicate honestly. Let's take a break and come back. But you don't want to do the familiar dance. If they're being all pissy and expecting you to chase them around the kitchen, you want to stop doing that. And then we can start rewarding directness, right? When they express honestly, reinforce it by saying, thank you so much for saying that directly. It helps me feel close to you. Because it does. It does, when someone is telling you the truth, help you feel close to them. But I want you to protect yourself from emotional withholding, right? If the pattern is chronic and unchanging, you might need deeper relationship boundaries or some kind of professional support where you need the other person to be on board with shifting this so that you guys can have better communication. And the last thing I want to say about this, because we've been talking about father wound so much, that there is this connection to father wounding, because if your father was emotionally unavailable or unpredictable or passive himself, that you may have learned, as I did, that anger was dangerous, or that honesty leads to punishment, or that your needs are too much, like you can't tell anyone about it. So I really feel like we have to at least acknowledge for the little kids inside of us that for many of us, and I know I include myself in this category, my passive aggression definitely began as a survival strategy in childhood, in a household where big emotions were not welcome and I wasn't allowed to be angry. So it's important that, we learn to do this in our adult lives, because healing the father wound also includes learning that your anger is important information about you. It doesn't have to be a threat. So listen, if you identified with this, if you were nodding your head, there's nothing wrong with you, right? It just means you learned to survive your childhood environment by doing these things, but now you're grown up. This is why you're here. This is why you're listening to this. So you get to upgrade your communication now. That is your right. And here's the thing, you deserve clarity, right? Your relationship deserves honesty, and direct communication itself is absolutely a love language. So if this hits home, I want you to drop a comment or share the actual episode with someone who you think could use it. And if you want to learn more about effective communication, I am right now. People are joining my community, and you can do that at terricole.com/reclaim, where we meet every single week. And I am also meeting people right now. Applications are open for my mastermind that starts in February, Flourish. So go to terricole.com/flourish, where we talk about this stuff all the time. So I want to hear from you. Does this resonate? Did this help you? I hope it added value to your life. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.